When it comes to Nintendo games that started in 3D, especially in the 16-bit era, Star Fox is one that comes to mind, but you could even count Donkey Kong Country as it used 3D models over pre-rendered backdrops. However, Star Fox is not entirely 3D, despite pushing the limits of the Super Nintendo's hardware. I remember being a little kid playing it, knowing that I was flying a ship, and using every amount of my imagination to know that this wasn't just a bunch of polygons moving. But as I've come to really respect the series, both from a visual and linguistic style, I really love to admire the simple yet detailed sprite work used in the game. I mean, right here, that Super Nintendo controller is completely just a pixel art piece, and honestly, not a lot of other Super Nintendo games come to mind that even have it. But heck, when you start the game, everything is 3D to the illusion, but even with the main sprites as well as the backdrop, though it's using what many call Mode 7, that itself is only the illusion of 3D. But hey, that's what art has always been, especially looking back to the Renaissance period, such as Michelangelo, I believe it was, doing the Sistine Chapel. Yes, it's all just paint over a large ceiling canvas. But to think about it, it gives the illusion of 3D, and a screen is no different whether rendering a complete 3D object or just a 2D one. It's all there to be convincing. Even Star Fox, as old as it is now, 3 decades later, it doesn't have to look totally accurate to be believable. It's the minimum, but it gets the job done. And as Miyamoto always said, the fun is in the game and not the graphics. The first sprite work we see in the game is, of course, the main title screen, with our main logo, push start, 1993 Nintendo, and of course the cast. Now, other than just the stars being pixels, we need to look at the main pilots and see just how much detail they've taken in here. I will promise you there's no point in the game where they look better. I love how Fox in the foreground, Peppy and Slippy are in the middle, and Felgo's in the background, eyeing Fox with, anger, doubt, maybe even jealousy. It's always appeared to me in that fashion. But this is one of my most favorite pieces because you know this was created just with the use of pixel arts. And of course, the R-Wing in the backdrop is the full 3D model being rotated at an angle. Yeah, it's very much a simple title screen, but it's a lot to break down. And yes, you can do this for a lot of them. In fact, one of my most favorite pixel art pieces has to be that of Donkey Kong Country 2, which of course has Diddy and Dixie around a treasure chest, illuminating gold, radiating light in all directions. It's still one of my most favorite ever. When we compare the pixel art to Ido's hatching technique, it's hard to find any comparison at all, because even though the characters are the same, art style is just so different. But now that I think about it, I wonder if hatching, let alone cross-hatching, could even work in pixel art. It's a concept I've never thought about before now. Before starting the game, we're introduced to the map screen, which is also our selection for the entire game. There are 3 major routes, as well as the black hole situated outside the lines, but definitely accessible if you know the right actions to take. This is also our first in-game look at the Lilat system, and from a design point, it's much like a board game, specifically that of Zathura in Reminiscence. Now, starting out in Corneria, whichever the 3 routes all vary in challenge, Pepper gives you a briefing just before you're launched out of Corneria Air Force Base on your first mission. What I love most about Pepper's sprite here is that as he's a general, he's officially in a pose and even raising the one finger just as Fox does throughout the comic series. A final note on the start screen, I love to think that proportionally, General Pepper is much larger than Fox is, as we would know both species, as Bulldog's significantly larger than that of the Vulpes vulpes. Now looking into the pilot sprites, as Fox and Peppy both have fur, being mammals, Falco having the plumage as a bird naturally does, and Slippy having the non-scale slick amphibian skin, it's curious to note they all have the same highlights. And to put that in perspective, we look at Falco having a yellow beak, Fox of course having the white muzzle, so is Peppy, and even Slippy having the green underside. They all have significant highlights there as if from the same light source. But when you're in space battle, deep in the Lilat system, it all really blends together. And of course, on the continue screen, we have a full body sprite of Fox McCloud with proportions similar to that of the statue puppet used in the advertising. Honestly, he almost looks like a chibi figure. One other aspect of it is I didn't realize how many animations he has. According to spritersource.com, he has a total of 8. And with how little, at least at the time, that SNES cartridge could hold, it really got the job done. We just needed him to hold the single paw up and a thumbs up, give us the let's go and a wink. Now moving into Star Fox 2, here's where Argonaut truly pushed the level of the Super Nintendo. Learned a while ago that Nintendo consoles always have been underpowered, and to the extent that's true, everything from the Mega Drive and especially up to the Switch. But as we mentioned before, as in the Wii advertising back in 2007, Miyamoto put out there, we weren't going to focus on graphics, we're focusing on gameplay. Retroactively, the first-party games of the Wii were definitely the best. Everything from Skyward Sword to the incredible port of Resident Evil 4. Much like Donkey Kong Country Trilogy in the 90s, Star Fox 2 was another example of how the system could still be relevant even with the onset of the upcoming 5th generation, which we know as a transitional period from 2D to 3D. So, these games were proactive on a retroactive console. In new fashion, with the updated intro, we have a beautiful new title screen here, especially with the face of Andross looming in the background. We have 2 new characters, from Mew and Faye joining the team. However, they're definitely much more detailed at this point. I have to say, refinement is the right word, because yes, they're still the same characters we recognize, with a sculpted style that really overhauls their design. The new title screen is now entirely pixelated, however, with individual animations for each of the 6 characters, including the R-Wing once you're selected. This really immerses you in a new level of interaction, because other than the games, all we had at the time was the comic itself, and of course this being the direct sequel, we see a lot more conversation in-game, especially from the multiple enemies, including our first official release of the Star Wolf team. I'm sure we can thank both the Super FX Chip 2 and the game developers for increasing both the visuals as well as the frame rate of this game over the original. It also really surprises me that this is more of an open map, as you can complete almost every level and planet in any order you desire. I find it so miraculous that Argonaut was able to increase this game on every level. It's bigger, faster, more detailed than the original, but also way more challenging. I mean, that's so hard to do and so unexpected with the technology that was available. But I know we can credit both the game developers as well as the new technology for adapting this to a console we did not know the power of until now. I'd like to thank spritersresource.com for all of these extracted animations from both the games. Can't imagine doing this video without it, as it's technology far beyond mind. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and please follow Star Fox Comics at facebook.com.